Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Leadership Lessons with Cheri. I took a little hiatus last week. It was a rough week. I do apologize, but I am back and ready for an amazing topic for this week that I want to share with you because I keep seeing it in places, and I've shared this before on all of my podcasts that I believe in signs. When something keeps being presented to you, it's something that you have to take note of. And this week I saw something on a Facebook post, and then a situation happened within some of the work that I do. And then yesterday's calendar quote, I have a quote calendar, was the same message. And I thought, ooh, I need to talk about this. And that message was get out of your own way. So, yeah, we need to talk about it as leaders because we do it, right? But before we get to that, I did want to share May 1st is just right around the corner. As a matter of fact, when you're listening to this, it's tomorrow. So I just wanted to remind everyone that beginning on May 1st, I'm opening the doors to, ironically, my program, Leadership Lessons. And it is an amazing program for aspiring leaders. If you know someone out there, especially if you're a school leader, because it's really geared toward teachers leaving their classrooms and going into leadership roles. However, it can be geared toward any kind of leadership in any kind of organization where someone's leaving from being the employee into the manager or leader role, which is a huge shift. We all know that as leaders. And I really felt the calling to bring something to the table because even myself, I had an amazing master's program at the University of Houston. It was designed specifically for ESL and bilingual teachers here in the Houston area who wanted to move from classroom into principalship. It was amazing. It was so amazing. I would go back to it over and over again, and I don't think many people say that about their courses in college. However, it taught me a lot of theory. It taught me a lot of do this because this is what you're supposed to do. And that's well and good, right? And we need that knowledge. However, theory is not always reality. And there's so many other pieces to it all that make us great leaders. And I feel like, and this was a conversation I had with my daughter one day, once we start learning a specific direction on our journey in leadership, it's really hard to unlearn it. You know, as children, because I worked in education and still do for so many years, I always said that little children were sponges. And that if you're going to teach something incorrectly, do it when they're young. Not that you should teach anything incorrectly, but those younger years, it's so much easier to undo learning and redo it. And then I think about myself being a high school student because I've never taught high schoolers before. Being a high school student, once we had a certain thing in our head that it was supposed to go a certain way, it was really hard to convince us to, that that wasn't true, right? That we had to think differently. And I know as adults, we find it to be the same way. So as we were talking about that one day, just how I can teach principals to be principals, I can teach assistant principals to be principals, but if we want leadership to look different, we have to get from the gate, right? From the first step. And so that's where leadership lessons comes in. So if you know someone who is might be interested in that program, the wait list is open now. Doors will open for the month of May. I will be allowing different clients and customers to come in, even if you're not in the school realm. But the pricing is amazing. And no, it's not free. I had somebody actually ask me that last week. It's not free, but it's pretty close. So have them reach out to me and let's get them registered for that program. All right, so let's get on to our topic for today. Get out of your own way. So here's what happened. And it falls so much in what I just said about this new program I'm releasing. I had the opportunity to talk with an assistant principal at a campus, not my campus, a different campus. And we're right in the middle of state assessments right now in Texas. And this assistant principal had actually called me for some advice on how to set up the testing environment. She's brand new to the position and she wanted to ensure that she had a schedule that made sense, that she was utilizing the right people. She was giving her teachers the right supports and breaks throughout the day because testing can last all day in most places. And she also wanted to ensure she was making an environment secure for testing regulations because they can be scary here without having any problems within her building. So she reached out to me a couple of weeks ago and she said, here are my thoughts. What do you think? And I said, I think you're onto something. What if we change this? What do you think about this? What if you tweak this? And we worked for a couple of hours. And she reached out last week and she had some testing irregularities. And I had to say, okay, but we talked about this. What happened? Because the last time we spoke, you had asked my advice. I had told you maybe think about this, this, and this. And she said, yeah, I didn't change it. And my question to her, with all due respect, I said, well, why not? And she said, because in my mind, I really thought this was going to be the right way to do it. And honestly, I had already put in the work to design this system, so I didn't make any of the changes from you. Now, it took everything I had to not get into a place where I said something that might be considered disrespectful, right? As leaders, we have to process and think before we speak. But I did say this. So I do have a question for you. Why are you reaching out to me now? And why did you reach out to me to begin with? And she said, well, I know I'm in trouble now, and I want your advice on how I can fix this. And honestly, I reached out to you before because I really was hoping you would say, yes, you did everything correct. And I had to say to her, at this point, I think you have to step back, do some processing. And at this point, I don't think there's anything I can do immediately to remedy your situation. However, when all of us have had some time to kind of digest it, we can talk about possibly discussing what to do in the future, but only if you're committed to actually taking my advice. Because here's the thing, this person is a past client of mine, actually a past employee of mine, and I did this for free. Now, I don't mind giving free advice. I do it all the time. I support people for free more often than I probably should. But I'm not going to do it if you're not going to take my advice. And worse yet, come back to me later when you didn't take my advice and now there's a problem and you want me to fix the problem, if that makes sense. So having said that, I honestly, I'm not bitter about it. There's no, really hard feelings. It's just that I'm not going to do business that way. Especially if you're going to reach out, because then my name becomes involved in all the things. But it's a case where when I saw that quote 2 times this week and that situation happened, I wanted to say, and I just have to say now, sometimes as leaders, we have to get out of our own way. We have to realize that we have some things about us, our experiences, our training, where we have some really amazing skills, or we wouldn't be in our position. But we also have to remember nobody is perfect and nobody knows everything. And thinking about that, if we're so caught up in, I already knew my program was perfect, you're not going to be open to progress. to striving for excellence, because you have this closed mindset where you feel like you don't need someone else's advice. If you're already thinking, I'm the best, and I'm all about having confidence. I had somebody tell me one year, I'm 5'4". I'm not a tall person. I wear heels, so I can seem taller than what I am. But this person said to me, wow, you're 5'4", but your confidence level is 6'4". And I was like, that's right. I am pretty confident. However, I'm not cocky. However, I know I don't know everything. And it's when you can say, I am confident in myself, because we need confident leaders. We don't need leaders who self-doubt, self-sabotage, right? We need people who are confident in their skill set, in their work ethic, in the fact that they can learn when they don't know something, and confident enough to be able to say, I don't have all the answers. I do still need to be a learner. But we don't need leaders who get to that place of saying, I'm better than you. I am the best, because that's a different message. And that also gets ourselves in our own way. And I stepped back really to reflect on this and thought about this whole concept, which I truly believe, and it's part of what I teach leaders as I coach and support them. Micromanaging happens when you fear that someone is better than you, knows more than you, especially when it's one of your subordinates. Micromanaging happens when you doubt that you have the right skills, and then you want to control. And control causes us to be in our own way. Control makes us blind. Control keeps everything in a place where we have to hustle, and we have to be on top of everything, and we have to be the boss of everything. I've been there. I'm going to be honest with you. I had a year that was really challenging. A lot of things were going on. A lot of things in my personal life and in my professional life. I wasn't in trouble at work, but there were some things going on that made me feel like I had to do a whole lot of micromanaging. And here's what ended up happening. I had the worst evaluation that year than I have ever had in my entire life. And I knew it. And I don't cry when it comes to things like that. That's just not my nature. But I cried during my evaluation meeting. And I remember my supervisor saying, are you, why are you crying? Because she knew me well. What's going on here? And I said, I'm crying because I'm very disappointed in myself. I felt this was coming. I was in my own way. I didn't ask for help. I was micromanaging because I needed control. And I have to do better. So I promise you, none of us are perfect. None of us. But when we're in our own way, it's not just going to affect us, affect our reputation, affect the outcomes that happen on our campuses, but it's also going to affect how people, our campuses or our organizations, sorry, I think school, it's also going to affect how our people want to show up for us. Who wants to work for a control freak? No one I know. Who wants to work for a micromanager? No one I know. Who wants to work for somebody who believes they have all the answers and they can't learn anything more? And who wants to work for someone who seeks out help to make a process or procedure better, but doesn't take the help, and then it all falls apart. No one I know. So how do we combat this? Now, it'd be easy for me to just say, get out of your own way, right? But it's not that simple. Here's how I did it. When I stepped back that year that I really, really, really was struggling, I had to, number one, figure out what did I do that caused the things to happen and find out what the root cause was of all of them. Because what was making me micromanage? What was making me feel like I had to have control? And why was I feeling it? I had to do some mindset work as well. I had to start believing in my skill set, remembering you have the knowledge and skills. And I wasn't brand new, right? So I had experience under my belt as well. But I lost that faith, which I just spoke about yesterday on Strong Inside and Out. You got to have the faith too. And belief in yourself and your confidence has to be there. And then when I figured out what went wrong, those were the things that I started building plans for. Did I need to do work with someone around confidence, around my self-worth? Did I need to work with somebody on how to make my processes and procedures better? Did I need to work with somebody on learning how to give up control? And when it boiled down to it, that's the first place I started. I had to start working with a mentor and think about, how do I give up this control, this need to control, this feeling like things were not going to go the right way if I didn't. It was hard work. It was good work because it helped me do better for my people. The great news is the following year, my evaluation was right back where it needed to be. And I went on to have many more years in the principal seat. We all have the setback. That's the so what. But the big piece is, now what? Now what are we going to do about it? So if you feel like you are getting in your own way, I definitely would recommend step back and do some reflecting. What's working? What's not working? Why is it not working? Why is that not working? Why is that happening, right? Not just why is it not working, but what's causing it not to work? And then start figuring out what you need to do next to get to where you need to go. Now, if you need support in that, of course, I'm always available for that. But you got to reach out. And my stipulation is you got to take it and you got to go with it with suggestions that I make. But nonetheless, I know you're not going to be one of those, or hopefully not. Anyway, that's everything I have for this week. Go out there, do some deep dive reflections, especially if you're in the school world right now, because this is probably the hardest time of the year. Wrapping up a school year, planning for the next, all of the things. And if you're out in the rest of the world, we're getting on to summer vacations and all of those things. And I'm sure it's just as stressful out there. So take that time, do the deep reflection, have an amazing week, and reach out if you need me.